Hi, JuE. I'm so excited that you're here today.
So am I. Thanks, Danielle, for having me.
So I've been kind of anticipating, like in both excitement and a little bit of anxiety, because you are the CEO of OLAPLEX, so you're the big chief. But I have to tell you a secret. So, as you know, OLAPLEX, we're very much a family, you know, origins. We are in the trenches. We are very passionate about our brand. And when you first came on and we first heard the name JuE Wong, of course, I don't think you realize this, but all of us were like Googling and checking things out. But right before we met, which was last February at our team meeting, um, I was at a trade show and I was there with Joe Santi and Jeff Schwartz. And Joe Santi says, "Come on, Danielle, I'm going to introduce you to some people." And he took me over to the StriVectin booth. And I sadly can't remember the two women's names that were there, but they just talked so highly of you. And it just calms me down. But what I find fascinating in all the research that we did, is that you really had a very diverse career. I mean, to go from commodities, which my dad worked on Wall Street, so I know you got to have spine of steel to go into the beauty industry. I mean, why did you choose the beauty industry? What was it that attracted you?
Yeah, I mean, beauty is definitely a place where you can bring happiness and smiles to people's faces. And I knew very early on, even when I was a commodities trader, I really loved the people side of things. And when I was kind of like having a family, moving from country to country, yes, it was very exciting. It was very rewarding because you've got portfolios of $2.5 billion that you're trading and it's other people's money, it's not your money, and you are given the recognition when you do well. And you have a scorecard every day. And I love that, sort of adrenaline that was coming through the work. But it became very clear that in order to have both a family and my kids and making sure that they have a mom at home, I knew that, I could not continue doing what I do. But I knew from all the 8 years in commodities, I love the fast pace. And beauty really offers the best of all worlds. As a woman, we all naturally love beauty. I always say, in any times, people will trade up, trade down, but they will never trade out of beauty because beauty
No.
is such a part of everyone's, well-being. Today, beauty is no longer just being vain and looking good. It's about taking care of yourself. So when I decided to move into beauty, I really wanted a more structured role. So I actually joined a CPG organization because in CPG, they give you a lot of structure and discipline and help you understand not only the brand, but the product. And so moving into that direction and into beauty through CPG, I found that I could keep the people engagement, the as well as the kind of financial and business stimulation. And more importantly, I could balance my life. I was able to still do my travel and my business travel, that is, and still be at home, with my kids as they were growing up. And at the end of the day, I always tell, younger women that I'm mentoring that you can't have it all, but you can still have it all, just not at the same time. And so therefore, I really feel like if I was going to give that advice, I better live the life. And so that was how it brought me into beauty.
And it must have been such a, I mean, as someone that's an executive in the beauty industry, I mean, certainly 20, 30 years ago, it really was a male dominated
Yes.
industry. I don't think you would see a female on a board or, in a CEO position back in those days. I mean, did you find that you had a lot of hurdles to overcome, or, I mean, was it just an easy transition?
Well, you mean from being in commodities and then going into beauty? Is that the question?
Definitely with beauty. I think also just being in a position of strength and power, definitely. But yeah, in particular the beauty industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first thing is the good news is consumer insights, while obviously can be gleaned from data, and obviously you're in a place where there's a lot of male domination, even in beauty. There's a lot of women consumers in beauty, but a lot of sort of leadership roles are still managed by, by men. But I never looked at that as an obstacle. I rather looked at that and sort of say, is that an opportunity for us, or for myself to break the mold or to be a trailblazer? While I did not conscientiously kind of say, look, I want to be the poster child for women to kind of break that glass ceiling, I also knew that if I didn't give it a go and I didn't try, the only regret I would have is that I never gave it a chance, right? The regret would never be about failing, because if you fail, then you knew I did it, I didn't do well in it, let's move on to something else. And I think it was important for me to not come in to, especially when I came from commodities. In fact, just before commodities, I was at PepsiCo managing, balancing foreign exchange for them as well, and doing a lot of what we call balancing financial transactions, because they were trading or they were selling Pepsi products and receiving local currency that you could not take to a bank and just convert it into US dollars. You really need to buy things within the country like China and Russia and Thailand, and then export it and get dollars for it. So because I was in that space, I knew that when you walk into a space like this, there is institutional knowledge. And when I went into CPG, I didn't want people to look at me and say, well, you think you know everything and you are coming in and you're going to disrupt the space or change things that need no fixing. So I was very cognizant and aware of the fact that I needed to come in to learn, not to tell or to teach so much. Because once I learn, then when my opinion is asked, I can then teach. And I think that attitude has permeated throughout my career. And I've always walked into any role knowing that I actually don't know enough. And in order for me to know and to really be good at what I do and earn the respect, because I believe that authority is given. If you're hired as a manager, you're hired as a director, you have certain authority that surrounds you, but respect has to be earned. Nobody has to willingly give you respect. They can definitely follow your orders for a little bit and do the bare minimum. But do you want people to do the bare minimum? No. You want people to feel good to be around you. So what has happened, walking in and in a very roundabout way in answering your question, I kind of put myself in a role of a student. And when somebody sees you as a student and you behave that way, they want to teach you. How many teachers will walk into a classroom and say, I don't want to teach? But when they walk into a classroom and the students want to learn, the teacher will want to teach. And I think that is how I learned as much as I did, even though I moved from a commodities role into a CPG role that I really had no idea about. And that has served me very well through the years.
I definitely, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of your career, and actually that goes to my next question, which is, you have a reputation of being that turnaround leader. You are able to go into companies that might be teetering a little bit, and you're able to turn it around. And I mean, with OLAPLEX, you've come in. We're a strong company,
yes,
but we have always had a huge potential to growth that we had not necessarily taken advantage of. So do you feel as though when you're coming into a company like OLAPLEX, are you handling it differently than you would for, say, a turnaround company? Does it make you stretch in ways that you might have not have expected or challenge you in any way?
That's such a great question. And, I'm so glad you brought it up. Definitely, my last growth organization was Moroccanoil. And Moroccanoil was also very different from OLAPLEX, right? It's already a 10-year-old company. When I joined OLAPLEX, it was going into its 6th year. It was still sort of like really strong, emerging brand that really inserted itself into a space that nobody dared to threat, except for OLAPLEX. And definitely coming in, I also, it is unusual because I took that same attitude that I started at CPG, because again, I moved from one industry to another, and same thing, moving from brands that were traditionally more turnaround and then going into an OLAPLEX, which was truly a growth trajectory brand. And I realized that, I would have more to gain by listening and being taught what the ropes are than to try to come in and make changes. So very early on, I already told myself that the first thing I needed to do was to get to know the people. And how fortunate I was, because I was employee number 36. So if you think about it,
company.
yeah, if you cannot get to know 35 people within a 30-day period, then it is mine to lose. So it became very apparent to me that OLAPLEX had 3 secret sauce. Obviously, one was its technology. The technology was second to none because you can fool someone some of the time, but not everyone all of the time, and definitely not for 6 years. So that was the first thing. The second secret sauce that OLAPLEX has was the love of the community. I have never seen a brand navigate through channel conflict the way OLAPLEX has, with the blessing of the professionals that they should move on to other channels so that they can amplify their brand awareness that will ultimately benefit the professional. And the third piece of it was the unconventional collection of talent that was at OLAPLEX. These people, when I start saying these people, because when I first step in, I realized very quickly they may not be corporate pedigree and people that have come from a more bureaucratic structure, but they operate from a place of authenticity. We use the word authentic so loosely, but when you walk into OLAPLEX, you can feel it, you absorb it. And I knew that with those 3 secret sauce, it will be a fool of myself to try to do anything different, but to leverage it, ride the momentum, and take it as far forward as we can. Then obviously the pandemic happened, but the pandemic only solidified all of those 3 premises. And therefore, the company as a whole is really going to continue to live and breathe that even after me, because I do believe that the culture is going to continue to permeate through every new person that comes in. I mean, we recently did a cultural survey again. Our first survey showed that people were very enamored with the company, but our second survey, in less than 6 months, showed that everyone saw this organization as a part of their DNA. We had 100% participation in the survey compared to 86% the last time, and we have doubled the number of people at the organization. So yes, I feel very privileged, and I'm not sure if you remember my first opening statement to the company at that time was that it's very rare to have a brand that wins box office success, which generates revenue, and also have critical acclaim, which wins all your Oscars and your Grammys, and your Emmys. And this is OLAPLEX. And if there was a term for OLAPLEX, it would be a unicorn. And unicorn is only one. So I do not want to see another unicorn other than OLAPLEX at this time.
It's funny because I remember that day and you were speaking to how impressed you were with the emotional intelligence, which I hadn't heard that term before. And I thought that was really fascinating. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Yes.
Because I think it's really important. I think a lot of, especially women, have emotional intelligence that really in the workplace might be undervalued, but you don't undervalue it.
and that is the reason why I was so impressed, because in the hairdressing community, one of the biggest thing that kind of really, showcase itself is the fact that we trust our hairstylists in more than just our hair. We trust our hairstylists with the secrets that we have. We sit in that chair and we actually think that everything we say will not leave that seat. And that trust that has been created is something that a lot of clients know, but a lot of corporate executives may not be aware of. And people like to say the hairdressing community is very emotional or emotionally charged. But to me, that's the wrong term because it's almost dismissive. It is emotional intelligence. You cannot connect with people if you were not emotionally aware and attuned. And that's what the hairdressing community has innate in them. Certain people gravitate to certain industry. The hairdressing community definitely attracts people who love people and who understand that by making a difference, a small difference in someone's hair, could mean the world of somebody smiling versus somebody crying. And when you know that the power of that emotion that you can draw out of people and give to someone, if that is not intelligence, I do not know what that is.
I think it also lends to our authenticity, like as you were saying earlier, is that, you know, it does come from that place of empathy and understanding of what people go through from the day to day. And yeah, no, I agree. And actually that does lead into the next thing, because one of the things that I have been not only fascinated by, but really thrilled that I've seen you really spearhead is that you have a commitment to, you've helped us commit to the unretouched and unapologetic content as a standard to beauty, you know, a statement to beauty standards. And as we know, Olaplex has always been disruptors in the industry. All that empathy and emotional intelligence all included in that. So I'm kind of curious, how do you think this will affect our industry? Because as we all know, it's always about the glossy image. It's always about the perfection and this, that, and that. And we're putting out a different statement, you know, more of embracing that beauty that you have. What do you hope that from other leaders that they're going to do with this?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, you know, in a world where every glossy magazine I looked at was, oh my God, that's an impossible standard. And I knew intuitively that the photographs and the images were retouched and were Photoshopped. I knew that, but it did not make me feel any better.
I don't think I understood that at that age. So this is why when I look at this, I get very excited that you're pushing this forward.
Yes. And I also feel that, you know, if you think about beauty standards in the past, you know, even like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, people and consumers want to be, you know, they were aspiring to something, you know, a brand, a company will show them something that they could be. But today, table stakes are the consumers and the clients want to be inspired by the brand. And when you are inspired by a brand, excuse me, what you want is for them to show you who they are and what they represent. And to me, Olaplex has the reach and the influence. And when you have the reach and the influence, what you need to do is to be socially responsible. And social responsibility doesn't mean just, excuse me, just doing what everyone says and is expecting of you. What social responsibility is making sure that the equity that you have is translated into a situation where the greatest good can be achieved. If there is a little girl out there, or even a teenager out there who look at our imagery and sort of know that this wasn't retouched and we are not sorry for whatever we are doing, and that, you know, because we believe that her real best self makes her unstoppable, then we have achieved what a beauty brand should do. A beauty brand is not to change your looks, it's to enhance what you have. And everyone, I mean, I know all of us say this over and over again, everyone is beautiful in their own way. We may not be the ideal of what the world tells us, but every one of us knows that it takes time and it takes effort to get to a place of confidence. And when we get there as leaders in the beauty space, our job is not to breed insecurity. Our job is to breed confidence. And I think, you know, this is our way. And I know that it's not just me thinking that way. The company has always been that way. Look at the hair, look at the hair imagery that we put out. They are virtually unretouched, just, you know, to kind of clean up some of the visuals around the hair, but never about the hair, because the quality of the hair is so good. So why do we have to do anything different? So everything that I have done at Olaplex has nothing to do with ideas that I have. It's really amplifying everything that Olaplex has done and making it more visible.
So with that being said, have you ever struggled with the image that society says you should look like? And if you have, like, what advice would you give our listeners who are looking to embrace their own beauty?
So on many levels, I think as a woman in general, we tend to be a little bit of a schizophrenic, right? We want to be ourselves, but we also want to look at images and sort of say, can I be that, right?
We
And we
like the
look,
pretty things.
yes, we do. I mean, the pretty shiny things. But I think where I have kind of been very fortunate is that growing up in Singapore, having parents that actually have very reverse roles. My father was a stay-at-home dad, and my mother was the career woman. So I've always had that impression, because that was what I was used to in my household, that that was the normal thing, that, you know, fathers can actually stay at home and mothers can actually go out and work. So when I got into the workplace, I never saw myself having to conform. I saw myself as, what should I do to allow myself the permission to still be successful in what I do, but also embrace, you know, the woman that I am, because I've always loved pretty things, as you mentioned. I've always loved fashion, you know, and making sure that I've got the latest and greatest, whether I can afford it or not. I always bought, you know, maybe some of the
I'm
inspired
still
looks.
drooling over the gorgeous emerald green jacket I saw you wearing the first time I met you.
Right. And I do splurge once in a while, not all the time. You know, like I will get one good thing in my wardrobe and then kind of use that for the longest time. So ultimately, I think, you know, what has given me sort of permission is that when I first started in the commodities business, there was a lot of men and everybody was kind of dressed, you know, very standard, you know, in their suits, their ties, or their polo shirts, depending on what level they are in. And the women were allowed to really be more fashionable. And so, you know, I kind of never thought anything different. And then when I went into the beauty space, obviously galore, everybody could be anything that they want to be. So I think I have not been sort of put in a place when I needed to conform as much, but I was also very aware that being in beauty, we were also sending messages out. And I wanted to make sure that in any place I can, I try my best to kind of showcase the product rather than a person. And that even when we do look at people, it was always profiles of people, so that people can look at the imagery and be able to say and place themselves in there. You know, so I think subconsciously or consciously, I've always kind of looked at it and say, if I'm in a position of influence and authority, what can I do something without really rocking the boat, but at the same time making a difference? Because I know that people look at pictures, they read words, they hear things. And sometimes, you know, a picture is definitely worth 1,000 words, but words also cuts, right? And therefore copies, content, all of this makes a huge difference in how we present ourselves, our brand, and even ultimately where we want to leave a legacy. And so I would say to everyone out there who is thinking of, should I do this or should I do something? I think the older generation are more likely to conform to what is expected of them. But what I'm so glad to see is that the younger generation are actually setting a path for themselves. And I was just talking to someone the other day when they told me, look, there are two sets of values as we grow up. There is what we call the lifestyle values, and then the generational values. The generational values rarely change, meaning that if you're born in a certain generation, you are, you know, stoked by certain sensibilities, you tend to carry that with you as you grow up. Maybe you refine it. But your lifestyle values changes because at different stage of life, you may have different purposes and different needs. And it's a little bit like when somebody say, God, I'm like my mother. Well, that's the reason. Your lifestyle has gotten to where your mother is, and you're adopting some of those lifestyle changes. So for instance, in your 20s, you're thinking of your career. In your 30s, you may be nesting, you're building a family, you're setting down roots. In your 40s, you're kind of understanding, where do I really want to be? You know, whether it's career, family, or even with your friends. And then in your 50s, you've come into your own. And some people come into their own faster, but most people get there by the late 40s, early 50s. And I think that is what is so great about moving through life, because you gain insights that becomes almost innate in you. And ultimately, what you end up doing is you want to pass that on. And if you can pass that on, all the better.
It's funny because I was sitting here as you were speaking, thinking of the generational values that we have. And it's very funny. I don't know if it's a rite of passage or I'm just going through it myself. But as a woman in her late 40s, I often think to myself that I am more brave in how I choose to look, and really embracing how I feel on the inside and bringing it on the outside, like we often talk about, than I ever was in my 20s or 30s. Then I think I was a lot more fearful, to the point where I don't even think I tried very hard because it seemed overwhelming. But it is interesting with generational. You do have different concerns from, decade to decade. But I do think you hit like this point where I don't know if it's that we just don't care.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look at you. You are beautiful, right? And it's not that you don't care or you care. It's that
well, maybe I don't care about what people think.
Yes. And I think that is what is so powerful, because the younger generation has actually gotten a lot of that already, right? They actually dress the way they want to, and they set almost the trends. Good, bad, or indifferent, they have been given the gravitas very early on because of parents that actually do tell them that they can be whatever they want to be. I mean, remember when we were growing up, I think our parents always tell us, speak when spoken to. I mean, at least for me, speak when spoken
me
to.
Too.
Always, sort of be deferent to your elders. Make sure that, you don't, speak out of turn. And when you're given those kind of guardrails, you tend to see yourself very differently, right? You tend to see yourself a little bit more subservient, and you can't wait your turn. Today, parents are teaching their kids, if you have something on your mind, speak up. You don't have to hide it. And they're obviously, with social media, they're also very afraid that they're getting their teaching and their learnings from a source that may not be totally reliable. Mm-hmm. So, but for us, no matter what happens, they still have insecurity. I would not imagine a younger person, with no insecurities. But I think as we get older in our own, and we are more comfortable in our own skin, then I think, what ends up happening is we discover how powerful that is. And then you want to share it. And when people see how comfortable you are in your own skin, they want to know, why is that? And that's why, we have podcasts like this, not because that we want to promote products, but we really want to impart nuggets of wisdom. Maybe we speak for 10 minutes and nothing really makes sense, but that maybe that one word, that one phrase, that one gesture that means something to someone. And I think ultimately, we are very fortunate. We now have platforms like this that we never had when we were growing up. I mean, it was the TV and it was print magazines and maybe
I had a black
radio.
and white one.
Yeah, and now today, I mean, it's unheard of that, unfortunately today you have to search, 7 different platforms to figure out like what is happening in your life. In the past, turn on the evening news, you get everything you need to know.
Well, I'm going to actually end this with 2 quick rapid fire questions, and then I'll let you go about your day.
Sure.
Kind of ties in a little bit of what we were talking about. Is that what beauty routine that you have been carrying with you throughout your generations, from like when you were younger down? Do you have anything that you do that to this day you swear by it, you still do?
Yes, I always wear sunscreen. I remember when I was growing up, my mom always tells me, why don't you just carry, a parasol or an umbrella? Because I live in Singapore, the sun is always out, same temperature year round. And that kind of, initially I thought she was crazy, and I was saying, I'm not going to carry an umbrella with me, So the next best thing was to tell her, look, I'm wearing sunscreen. And I'm so glad I do, because, and I continue, even now, and in the pandemic, I still wear sunscreen, as part of my routine, for the daytime, because I always worry, I have to sit in front of a window with lights coming in. What if that comes through? So that's one thing I always do. The other thing that I always do is I always remove my makeup before I go to bed, no matter how tired I am. And
I try to.
I know some people try, but then the good news is, because Asians don't have very, long lashes, I normally don't wear eye makeup, so it's not as bad. Like, for a lot of people that wear mascara, they definitely need to, otherwise your lashes, may get weakened. So those are the 2 things: wear your sunscreen and always remove my makeup before I go to bed.
Okay, last one's going to be tough. So if there was one OLAPLEX product that you could choose that you could not live without, which one would it be?
Well, if it's only one, I mean, I would then go with number 0 only because it has our highest concentration of bisamino, which I just simply love that product. So it would be that, but I really cannot. If I have, please give me one more. It would be my 0 and 3. That's what I would
0
go
and 3.
with.
Well, I almost see them as package deals, so it kind of works. I had someone throw that question at me, and I was like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is very hard. But that is the reason why OLAPLEX, to be very honest, has kept our SKU count really tight. Because what we want people to be able to do is to enjoy the whole routine of self-care and skincare, for hair without feeling like, they have to choose. Because sometimes it's like a dessert tray. You have all of those dessert and you just want a bite size of everything. And that's how I
Definitely.
see OLAPLEX.
Thank you so much, JuE. You
Thanks,
are always a
Danielle.
joy. I'm looking forward to seeing you later.
Thank you. You take care, Danielle. Bye.